Hi there, I'm Treehead, the author of the Reddit thread titled Punishing Yourself in Path of Exile. While the build itself was in a very tentative spot, the thread overall got some very good reaction from the community. While I still don't consider this build to be done completely, and, with 1.3 around the corner, I don't really want to finish it now, I had some improvements that I wanted to share that have made me be able to clear up to level 78 maps and dangerous bosses such as Shrine Piety, Necropolis Mervale, Palace Dominus, and the trio from the Atziri fight. In addition to that, I've managed to go from 0% at level 92 to 0% at level 93 without dying at all, so this build is really quite survivable. To put it in simple terms, this build combines a crit version of the Glacial Cascade skill with Shackles of the Wretched and Punishment to give the spell all sorts of interesting benefits. For starters, cast when damage taken is used to apply Frost Walls. Whenever a target is damaged enough, just cast when damage taken Frost Wall. Whenever a target is damaged by me enough to reflect enough damage to pass the level 1 cast when damage taken threshold. This is a major defensive benefit, as many melee enemies, for instance the Atziri trio, and many ranged enemies, can have their damage negated or greatly reduced by putting up a frost wall between your character and the enemy. In addition, Frost Wall also pushes the target back, which can be used to proc subsequent hits of Glacial Cascade or just interrupt damage for a time. Similar to the Knockback support gem, which is a popular support gem to be used with Glacial Cascade for this reason. Apart from Frost Wall, cast when damage taken is also used to proc blind and power charges through two different piercing gems in my chest. In this case, Glacial Cascade and Arc. Finally, to give ourselves a safety net, we use a level 1 Warlord's Mark and an Immortal Call to limit the amount of damage that we take. Keep in mind that the trigger for not taking Immortal Call damage from yourself is based on when you are casting the spell and not when the damage is reflected. This means that if your curse is not up and you have some resistant enemies, or you're taking more than the normal amount of reflect, or etc. in weird situations, it is still possible to one-shot yourself. On the flip side, if Immortal Call is up when you cast Glacial Cascade, it will protect you from every hit that Glacial Cascade could potentially reflect. This is counterintuitive, but it can be evidenced by the notion that, when you're shooting someone, oftentimes you'll see multiple frost walls appear in front of them, and if Immortal Call triggered between hits, that would not be possible. In any event, this setup is not only has us proccing frost walls to protect us from enemies, but it also has us effectively using a 10-link Glacial Cascade, which is Glacial Cascade supported by Knockback from Frost Wall, Power Charge on Crit and Blind from the level 1 piercing spells linked to cast from damage taken, Spell Echo from Pledge of Hands, Life Leech, increased area, concentrated effect, increased critical damage, and added chaos support gems, and that 10-link spell for the cost of a 7-link spell. While a 10-link is somewhat of an overstatement for the amount of damage that we deal, it's not as much as you would think. We deal a lot of damage. I've changed a number of things about this character from last time, and at this point I would like to take a look at them. First, I've re-geared a bit. The prior version of this character, which was mainly a proof of concept character, was wielding Malachi's Simula for blood magic and dual-wielding Apep's Rage to make as much use as possible of the added chaos damage, since Glacial Cascade scales quite nicely with added damage effects. Since then, I've realized that by swapping out dual Apeps, which did more damage as a 6-link spell, for Pledge of Hands, that Pledge of Hands actually deals more damage because it is effectively a 7-link. In addition to this, since we're using a staff, we can use the 5 or 6 link in our chest to fuel the level 1 cast when damage taken gems, which free up one of our 4 links for other things like auras. On the topic of auras, I'm currently running Herald of Ice, Clarity, and Purity of Lightning aura. And I've swapped out Malachi's Simula and Blood Magic altogether in order to do this, picking up Eldritch Battery, which I've learned gives us just enough mana from using an ES Helm to run our spell indefinitely, so long as Warlord's Mark is active on the target, so we can use its Mana Leech every now and then. Previously, Mana Leech was unused in this build, so I like this change because it makes it more efficient. While I did originally try to make use of Mind over Matter in addition to the other changes, the consistent and sometimes spiky damage you take from punishment severely hampers your mana pool's ability to sustain the mana cost of a 7-link spell. Instead, I'm using a 6-link Lightning Coil to lessen the damage. Lightning Coil is not quite as good as I had hoped, as it turns out you can't shock yourself through reflected crits. All the same, Lightning Coil and Shackles of the Wretched have the neat combination that when you are shocked once, potentially from a smaller physical hit, you cannot be shocked again for 3 seconds. This means that if the Miscreations in the Shrine Piety fight hit you for physical damage and shock you for half a second, Piety's Lightning Storm is unable to shock you for 3 seconds afterwards. I've updated the rest of my gear as well, switching to Wind Screams instead of Dodra's Damning, and relying on a very fast cast Lightning Warp to get away when needed, since the movement speed on Windscream is notably less. Also, I've updated my jewelry, as you can see here, to give me mana and mana regen, which I previously didn't need, and to fill the hole in my resist created by wearing Lightning Coil. I've also updated my passive tree, which I'll show briefly, but won't go into too many of the details, primarily because this is a 1.2 passive tree, and as pretty much everyone knows, 1.3 is kind of looming over us now, so it doesn't make too much sense to dwell on the specifics. In 1.3, I don't think that Scion would be the best choice for this character, as Witch would have access to the spell damage and crit over in the Templar, and better access to the Shadow's crit nodes as well. Just remember to pick up Veil Pact, as it's basically required for this build. I hope you've enjoyed my update of this character concept. Barring patch notes, this is the build I'm hoping to play in the upcoming leagues, so hopefully I'll have more information and a guide to come following that league. If you like this build, check out the rest of my YouTube channel for other builds such as the almost trivial Itsiri Trio, Shrine Piety, Palace Dominus, and other videos showcasing this build. Thanks for watching.
The light of divinity! Die! Nightmare prevails! Die! The light of divinity! Die in awe! Die in awe! Nightmare prevails!